Here's another project. This old guy is a photographer and lives in the sort of this estate here, which looks pretty horrific. You can see, you get the idea, not very nice. As of course, got 80% of people who come from elsewhere, a dumping ground, all of that. Problems, problems, problems. So he said, okay, let's get this group of problematic young guys, boys, and let's get this slightly less problematic young girls together, and let's together invent our story and tell the story on the walls of the factory opposite. So this, as you can see, this factory is exactly opposite. Now, every year this changes, and they're talking about their own aspirations, what they're doing, what happened in that year. So you might think, oh, this is a boring community arts project. But actually, as you can see, there are lots of experts, in quotes, visiting this. But it's a changing sort of gallery, open-air gallery, but is actually relevant to that particular grouping there. Here's another example, Lille, which is another sort of place in northern France, which decided to pretend to be Mumbai for a night. Yeah? So what they did, and again, this is not that difficult, because all they're doing is project. This is just a projection. Yeah? They've projected, this in fact is not a church, is a railway station, but once projected onto, can you see, it feels like a Hindu temple. And there obviously, as you can see, I don't know if you can see at the back there are quite a few thousand people who are pretending to be Indians on that day. Well, not pretending to be Indians, but you know what I mean. They're enjoying it, it seems. Here's another example, which again is my basic point, but quite often we're far too explicit. Last night we discussed, should you call it the intercultural city? Far too heavy and boring as a thing, but you get the idea. Melbourne's one of the most successful things in their festival was a project which was simply called Let's Dance. So there was a teacher from the different different backgrounds. And towards the end of the 2-week period, 2,000 couples were dancing. This happens to be the little segment where the Brazilians are doing it. It was a Brazilian evening. 9 months later, apparently, there was quite a lot of bonding going on, and there was 9 months later some results. But that, in some sense, that's a separate issue. The main point was, it wasn't saying, let's meet an Indian tonight. It was much more, do you want to have a dance? So it was about the dancing, which was the primary thing. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's successful. This is a project I haven't been to. These other ones I have, which my colleague went to. It's called the Todos Festival in Lisbon, which is called a walk through culture. And it's in the worst area, which they basically it's called Muraria, which they're trying to make into a sort of intercultural laboratory. Very, very poor. But one of the things they do is you start off the walk through cultures by being blindfolded. And you just walk through these streets being led by someone there, and you're just smelling the place. So you get the drift. It's just trying to get this more sensory feeling of how you can navigate a city or a place. Here, Tilburg, in a city of about 250,000 in Holland, which is really about the past and the future. Textile company, very much the city's about incubation of stuff. You even have all these graffiti saying incubate culture. And this textile museum, I thought, oh Christ, not another textile museum with lots of old... Sorry, I'm not being negative about old machinery. But basically what it was, not run by a museums director, but run by an anthropologist, which meant that the perspective was different, and it was all about the new. So what they were doing with the old machinery, they were getting sponsorship for new machines, is creating new products. So the whole museum wasn't really about a museum in the sense we think of it. It was about the future, about new ways of using materials as well, and so on. So they're also a place which is very into what we're talking about. So that's a conference that took place a couple of years ago, which is just about all these issues we're discussing. Berlin, one of the big issues is language. People don't speak German. German isn't the easiest language on earth. And there's a group of mothers, which are called Stadtteilmutter, which means district mothers, who are actually becoming language teachers for all of these people. Of course, that very personalized thing creates sort of, I suppose, bonds of various sorts. And another thing I noticed in Berlin that all over the place there are these signs. This happens to be graffitied, unfortunately, but Allah loves you, Shiva loves you, Jesus loves you. My camera didn't quite work to go right the long way. But this was in front of a kindergarten and so on. So there's a lot of symbolic stuff going on in terms of the sign system to sort of indicate the city expressing its intention through signs. So here's an example. This is the German flag, black, red, yellow, and then the Turkish flag superimposed upon it. So lots of little, I suppose you could call them symbolic games, and they're not there to be there forever, but they're just there to say, oh, I get the point. And I think these sort of ideas from Berlin in this case are quite interesting. This is the same picture from Toronto. Toronto, as you know, has got all these enclaves, these ethnic enclaves, Portuguese, whatever, Greek, and so on. But one of the things about it is their strategy is so, and I think it's a good place to look at in terms of strengthening the actual districts. So you are, in this case, Italian and Canadian. Of course, my main point is that we are obviously have multiple identities in one way or another. Here's another example, as you can see, the guide to welcoming and intercultural welcoming of the city of Madrid, which is about citizenship. Many people come in, they can't be a citizen for a very long time, and Madrid is, after a year, giving people local citizenship. So again, that sense of local belonging, even for people who've just come in, who are in a limbo situation. So it's interesting that Madrid is doing that. Again, there are, of course, issues of conflict. Turin is regarded as one of the best places, with another city I'll show you in a minute, which is really about negotiating conflict. And so this is called the House of Conflicts. I quite like the idea of the House of Conflicts. Would I go there? I'm not sure. But anyway, the point is, where it said, below it says, where the issues or the problems, it's scontri incontri, that basically the problems will become an encounter. You see what I'm saying? But the words happen to fit in Italian. Another city that's very good, I'm just mentioning these cities because you can look all of this up, is Reggio Emilia, which is also quite nearby, which again is very good at thinking that through. I think most places here, in particular in the States, is very good multi-faith, interfaith ways of bringing different groupings together, and that's pretty common, I think. But I think also there's, even if you go to Asia, Penang in Malaysia is perhaps one of the most multicultural places in the world. Everybody, it was a crossroads, Chinese, Indians, Malays, etc., etc. And their whole positioning today is precisely the point we've just mentioned, that they're actually, in a sense, selling their city, their place, as a place which precisely is working on diversity, precisely because we often think that Asia is a bit, or some countries in Asia are a bit enclosed. So this is a DVD shop with Jesus, a Hindu elephant, Ganesh, and Islam. So even the DVD shop has these massive posters outside. And here, quite interestingly, if you've got a dandruff problem, you can deal with it in 4 languages, yeah? See what I think? Yeah? Dandruff, this probably means dandruff, someone will help me later. But you get the drift. So this is about, I think, also a form of communication. Now look at this. This is just something in Amsterdam, which you can probably read it. Access to a New Amsterdam, where your perfume is French, haha. Your tailor is British, really. The cooks are Italian, the cars are German, and everything is organized by the Dutch. But anyway, I know again they're playing, but you're using the city as, in a sense, a canvas to explain intent. That was what I meant by everything being opaque. You can't see things. It's always behind a door. You have to go there. It's a destination. You have to drive there and so on. And here's another example. They have a one-stop shop for people who've come from abroad. It's called the Expat Centre. But that's just another idea. But here we're beginning to see the more things that is particularly focused on the economy and innovation. And Palo Alto, obviously, in Silicon Valley, is a place that tries to attract foreigners. But Singapore actually has a strategy, a talent attraction strategy of every from their point of view, interesting foreigner they can grab, if I can call it that, seduce, whatever they do. So what are we really saying? Now, I don't know why, but I used to have an English Bull Terrier for 15 years, and that's Target's logo, isn't it, the Bull Terrier? So I don't know if that's one of your new tourism strategies. So find the Bull Terrier. So why is openness important? This is the head of design from Philips. You get a richer environment, you have more insights, we have an absolute advantage from having many cultures. And in fact, many of these agendas started from within the business community. Obviously, they want to make profit, I understand that, but as they're globalizing, they're using that as the thing. But it also links to the other point about the new economics, about open innovation, which means you give out more, you share more knowledge and so on. And I think that connection about the open funnel of bringing in ideas from elsewhere is one of the key things. And so what we're really saying is that this openness, and Tony mentioned these words that are on here, which is about adaptability, innovative capacity, future-proofing, and so on, and ultimately well-being and wealth creation, is really the aim of all this. So what we're trying to do, when I say we, this project, this idea, is to create conditions where we can think, plan, and act with imagination. And here, I suppose, the arguments for culture are, there's obviously initially we said, oh, culture is intrinsically great, and then some people said for many years, oh, it's good for social inclusion, it's good for image, it's good for tourism. What I think we're talking about here is it's so embedded that we're just drawing on the richness of difference without sort of always trying to make a special case of one thing or the other. But what this allows, in theory, is the idea that ordinary people can make the extraordinary happen if given a chance. And just so you know, this is the only slide I'm going to show you, because we're talking a bit about arts. This is a link between innovation capacity of European countries and amount of arts participation. Low innovation Greece, very low artistic participation. Portugal, very low artistic participation, very low levels of innovation. Now, isn't that interesting? If that doesn't convince someone, I'm not saying it's causal, but the correlation between innovative capacity of a city and a region and the strength of its cultural diversity, activity, and particularly participation is an incredibly strong link, which is absolutely unusual. So how can we achieve this? I'll just do this and I won't leave the end bit, which was 10 steps to being an intercultural city. Is just thinking through of how one is this intercultural city or not. Well, the no policy, there's just the city, a blob, just there, outside, there's no policy. Then the migrant is just an outsider, just go away. Then there's the guest worker policy, you know, you can come in for a limited amount of time, and when you've done your job and when I've sort of used you, go. Then there's the assimilation policy, which is very much the French policy, where you are completely French. That's it. Shall we just do that again? You are completely French. Boom. Yeah? Or the multicultural policy, and of course multiculturalism is something we are building on when I talk about intercultural, which is in a sense saying, yes, we all come in with our differences, we're green, yellow, and all of that, but we are a bit separated in some sense. We acknowledge, celebrate even, and all of that, the difference, but do we do something together? The intercultural policy is really saying, okay, something happens there. We do come in and we each influence each other and our own views about things. And for me, that's sort of quite interesting. It doesn't mean you lose your identity. It just means that what it says here, it's going beyond equal opportunities and respect for differences to a transformation of institutions, public space, business and civic culture,